Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Pull up
Hello.
with limbs and things.
Welcome,
Okay.
everybody. This is Pull Up with Limbs and Things. Tonight, we're talking to some of my friends and colleagues, and we're talking all things physical therapy. So, we're going to weigh in on a couple of different topics, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I met them at different stages of our careers and also personally. So, Dr. Shacorrah and Dr. Teoma, please introduce yourselves and welcome to Pull Up with Limbs and Things. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
I'll go. Okay. I'm Dr. Shacorrah Evans. I'm a physical therapist, as Dr. James said. I primarily practice in pediatrics, school-based pediatrics, and I do some home care a little bit on the side. I'm located in Peoria, Illinois.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Teoma LaShawn, and I am here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am currently a faculty resident at Duke University, physical therapy faculty resident, but I previously practiced in outpatient physical therapy, outpatient orthopedics. Also did health promotion and faith and health work in African American churches and community organizations.
So you see, we have a diverse group of physical therapists in the different realms that we practice, and there's so many ways to become a physical therapist in terms of your niche. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those things, but let's talk about the path that we took to get to physical therapy. So, who wants to begin?
I'll talk about how I just got to physical therapy. I played basketball in high school and college. And I have a twin sister, Tatiana. Hey, Tat. And so one day we had a game, and I was in high school, and I didn't have my ankle braces on that day. The one day I didn't wear my ankle braces, and I end up spraining my ankle like really, really bad. And my twin and I were both being featured in this local newspaper in San Francisco. And on the next page of the newspaper, a local sports physical therapist was being featured as well. And she was being featured because she treated soccer athletes and the WNBA team members at the time. And so one, that was really exciting, but since she was being featured and I just sprained my ankle, my mom said, well, let's go to her since she's the expert. And so that was my introduction into physical therapy. So I was in the clinic with WNBA athletes as a high school athlete. It was just very cool to see. But also just looking at the job, I knew I wanted to be in sports in some kind of way. And I was like, well, this looks like something that I can do. And ever since then, I pursued physical therapy. So that's how I got into it.
Nice. Dr. Shacorrah.
I really kind of stumbled into it. I thought I was going to go into computer programming because I thought I loved computers. And I was in high school and I took a computer programming class and I hated it. And so I went to my guidance counselor. I think I was like a junior. And I was like, I might have been a senior because I was like, no, I think it was a junior. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now. I have no idea. You know, they make you take the career test. And so they're like, well, it says you like helping professions. She's throwing all this stuff out there. And I was like, no, 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 don't want to do that. And at the time, I had started a step team at my high school. And so she's like, well, you really like to teach people physical things. What about physical therapy? And I was like, never seen it, never thought about it. Sure. And at my high school, you could take a certain amount of days to go shadow careers. And so I got set up to shadow at an outpatient physical therapy clinic. And I just loved it from the day I saw it. Like, I was like, I want to do this. I love the patient connection. I love just the energy of the gym. I love the idea of people working hard at something physical and seeing them get better. And I really just like love at first sight kind of thing. And so I decided then like that's what I was going to do. And I just never looked back.
Oh, I didn't know these stories you guys had. My story goes to my dad. He had ACL surgery when I was in junior high school, and I went to physical therapy with him, and I saw how they were helping him get better. But it wasn't until he had another surgery where on his same knee that he ended up having to have a therapist come to his home, and help him walk up and down the steps, learn to be king of the castle again. And that's when I was like, you know what? I think I like that. I really want to see what I can do the same thing. I knew I wanted to go into health, but I didn't want to go to school so long to be a doctor. But I wanted something that gave me more one-on-one time with a person, and I saw that that really happened when you were a physical therapist. So those are all good stories. I'm glad that we got our way into physical therapy, because that, you always hear people's story where they, want to go into it for this reason or another, but having a personal story kind of makes you more attached to the career, wouldn't you say?
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. So tell me something you love about physical therapy, even now.
I love the challenge of it. I tell people all physical therapy, especially, I'm going to say especially school based pediatric therapy, but physical therapy is a science based, learning field, but the practice of physical therapy is really an art. It's more art than a science. And I tell people that all the time because everybody is unique and everybody's response is unique. And you learn this stuff in a textbook from school. And then you get out there and there's some differences in what you see, and you really have to shape your toolbox to your client. And so I love that. I love kind of getting the child in and kind of figuring it out. And when I had that aha moment, that I'm like, okay, like we're gonna make progress. I got this now. And so I like the new challenge that comes particularly with working with kids who throw curveballs at you all the time. So that's one thing I love. And the other thing I really love about the field is all the options that you have. So I know, like, when I decided to do this, it was, learning about all the specialties. I really feel like physical therapy is one of few fields that you can get your entry level degree and you can switch settings and it's like starting all over again, but you don't
Yeah.
have to go back to school. You know what I mean? So you never, if you get, burnt out in a setting or you feel like you're not being challenged, you can switch to a totally different setting, totally different population, and, with the same degree. And I love that about our field. Everybody has their niches and you can reinvent yourself within the same profession as many times as you want to.
I love that. Yeah, that's very true. That's kind of what I just did. Switching from being in the clinic all day to now being in education. But what I love about physical therapy, since most of my time has been in the clinic, is the patients. So sometimes I may get tired of the I guess when you're working in it so long, the monotony of maybe your flow kind of being the same, but what's different every day are the patients. So every day you may see a couple of new patients, and then you may see some of the same patients, but no matter how tired I may have been, I always would give my all to that specific patient that was in front of me at the moment. The patients come in and they have no control, I mean, to a degree, of who they're going to work with sometimes, or what their insurance covers, or how much their insurance covers. But when they're in front of you, like, you have the control and you can kind of guide that relationship. And I really like giving my all to the patient, communicating with them. I have fun with my patients. It's not just, like you said, it's an art. So even the communication part of how you communicate what you're going to do and how you're going to do with patients is an art. And what did one of my colleagues called me? Oh gosh. I think the master of building rapport or something like that, because that is so essential in physical therapy and can make the difference, be the make or break difference of if a patient follows through with their plan of care or how well they recover, is how much they know that you care. And you have to care. And I really operate out of an ethic of care. And so I really want my patients to have the best, and I want them to recover to the best of their ability. And I also want people who haven't tried physical therapy or who have just been living with pain for so long, because they just think that their condition is hereditary, which it may or may not be, or it's just something that they've always dealt with, but they don't know that if you just try, a good physical therapist like us, then pain is not something that people have to live with on a daily basis. And I just wish more people knew that. And I wish we just did a better job of getting that message out there, because I really like seeing those people that don't think, they're like, I'm here because my doctor told me to come here, but I don't know what you can do for me. And I'm like, oh, that makes me really excited. So you just wait and see. And then a month, 2 months later, they're like, wow, Dr. LaShawn, like, thank you so much. And I'm like, absolutely, it was my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. I agree. There, to both of you all's point, in terms of the ability to transition or change your niche in physical therapy, that's something unmatched, I think, in any profession. You don't have to go back and go to school to get, like, specifically, if you don't, I mean, there are some certifications, but you can switch settings if you would like to, and it's like a whole new career. And then the fact of us taking the time to actually learn someone and build rapport with them, that's something you have to have just in being a physical therapist. We spend so much time with someone. If you don't have a good relationship with them or trying to get them to do something you want them to do, it's just not going to work. But also for me, in terms of physical therapy, what I like the most is the fact that you can get somebody from what they can't do to being able to do it. And they always tend to think that it relies on medication or something of that nature, like an external factor. But it really can just be you working with what you have and trying to do better. So that's my thing. But tell me something that you guys want to talk about. I won't ask all the questions tonight.
Well, Teoma, I know you were going to talk about a little bit. So Teoma mentioned before, we were talking a little bit before we went live, but about how she's been trying to get into education forever, which I was like, ditto.
Right.
So I would really love for you to talk about a little bit about what that journey has been like, and then, how you ended up where you are.
Absolutely, yes. So my journey into physical therapy education. So I knew always, even from back as a master's degree student at Howard in physical therapy, I never wanted to be someone that wanted to work like in the clinic full time. I always knew that. I had classmates that would sit and talk about how much money they're going to make and what they're going to do and what setting they're going to be in. And I just never felt like I could fully join those conversations because I didn't feel the same way that they felt. And so, but I was always interested in the professors who were teaching us physical therapy, but also the guest professors that came in. And I want to give this shout out because I don't ever think I've ever publicly gave this shout out to this professor. And you all may know her, Dr. Tracy Thomas.
She
yes. I can't even remember which university she is, but I remember
she's at FAMU right now.
Yes. So she came to Howard while I was there, and she taught physical therapy, but she taught pharmacology to us. And she told us her story of how she got this extra degree in pharmacology, not knowing how it was going to be integrated into physical therapy and not even trying to do that. And it just over time working out for her. And for some reason, that story always stuck out with me because I'm also an ordained Baptist minister. And a lot of the work that I do revolves around faith and health. And so I just knew because she told her story about how she had 2 different career paths that came and that were able to be intersected at some point in her life. I knew that minds would be able to be intersected as well because of her story. So Dr. Thomas, I appreciate you telling me that story, or our whole class that story way back while we were at Howard, or I was at Howard, but that stuck with me. And so now, even though I'm in a faculty development residency specifically for physical therapy, I'm still trying to bring the faith and health component in, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I've done some adjunct teaching while I lived in California. So I would work in the clinic part-time, and then I would do adjunct teaching 1 or 2 days a week with Samuel Merritt University. And I think maybe at one of our major conferences, Combined Sections Meeting, CSM, I think that I found out about the faculty development residency that Duke hosted. And I don't like to just jump into things without really knowing how to do them. I like to be trained. And so because there's a lot of faculty, there's not a whole lot of training actually for faculty, especially if you like don't go the PhD route. And even if you go the PhD route, you're focusing on your PhD dissertation work. You aren't focusing on how to teach. And so one thing I really like about Duke's program is that they're really helping us learn how to teach and what that actually means. And
okay, hold on. So
Mhm.
do you have a degree in education now?
I don't have a degree in education.
Okay.
My degrees are in kinesiology, master's in physical therapy, doctorate in physical therapy, master's in divinity. So I got a bunch of degrees. None of them are in education though. So
you know that I'm glad you said that, because there's a lot of us that think that because we don't have the education degree, we can't go the education PT route.
Right. So you still can get into education. There are only 4 physical therapy faculty development residencies in the country as compared to how many like other types of residencies there are. But I appreciate this is a 2-year residency and it's full time. And so I appreciate having this time to kind of grow into a faculty and academic position versus kind of be just thrown into the fire. So.
Well, did that answer your question, Dr. Shacorrah?
Yeah, very much so, because I didn't know anything about faculty residencies until you became a faculty resident. I was like, what is that?
I don't think I knew about that either. You know, we hear about the residency programs with all the other like niches,
Exactly.
but not the faculty ones. Okay, that's great.
I can't even remember how I found out about it. I think, like I said, it was at CSM or something, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Teoma, you got a question you want to ask?
Yes, I want to ask Shacorrah how, like, you're doing pediatrics and geriatrics, or what are you?
So yeah, I was talking to Doc. So I do home care. I started my PT career in home care, and I always knew I wanted to segue into pediatrics, but specifically school-based. And school-based peds can be hard to break into. Therapists who usually get a job in the schools don't leave them. And there just aren't a lot of therapists employed there. So there's usually only going to be a handful, maybe one in a district. And so I started my career in home care, honestly, because at the time it was the highest offer that I got. And I was the only reason a lot of home care agencies at the time didn't want to hire new grads, but because I graduated with a doctorate, and, they were like, well, we heard there's supposed to be, more differential education or differential diagnosis in your curriculum. Like, let's see what you're coming with, like we're going to take this risk on you. And so I do feel like part of my role there was opening the door for new grads to be in home care, specifically at that company. And so I started in home care. And then when I found a school-based job, I started 1 day a week in the schools. And as I increased and then became the lead therapist at the school, and then eventually went to full time at the school, I just decreased home care. So I was telling Dr. James, I feel like home care is just in my DNA as a therapist now. And I don't know if I can ever really let it go. So I do some PRN in home care. I like the shift in the mind too. Kids and geriatrics, there's, to be at both ends of that spectrum, give me an interesting perspective. I love coming into the homes. I live in Peoria. There's a lot of disparity in Peoria. And I work for a Catholic home-based home therapy company. And so we don't turn anybody away. And so we have a lot of patients with a lot of need. And I just really love going into those homes, love working with patients who look like me, who don't see other people like me coming in to help them, and the rapport that I can build and the comfort that happens immediately. And so the progress that I can make there I really enjoy. So yeah, I do a little bit of home care. I will probably always do a little bit of home care. My love is pediatrics. But yeah, I just can't get that bug out of my system. So there we are with that.
Now, is there any, and this is for both of you all, any field of physical therapy that you're like absolutely not, like I just can't do it, or I'm staying away from it for whatever particular reason? And I'll answer first. So for me, I can't really do pediatrics 0 through 5. It's interesting, but I'm too much of an emotional person. So I don't think I can handle like babies being injured or not being well, or not being healthy. And I think it would just be too much on my emotions and my heartstrings to work with that age group. And so I've always kind of just steered clear of 0 through 5. But after that, once they get into their youth sports and start breaking their wrists and getting these overuse injuries, send them my way.
Yeah, I think so. I'll say for me in schools, particularly with pediatrics, it's mostly kids with disabilities. So they're born with the disability that they have. And so I've never done birth to three, so I've never done early intervention. Kids age into the school system at 3 years old with early childhood education, and then they go into kindergarten. But what you said, Tim, is what I hear from a lot of people is that they feel like it is sad, and it breaks their heart when they see kids. But for me, it's the exact opposite. Like, I feel like I see so much of God's grace and so much of God's deliverance in these kids. And kids are so tenacious,
Very.
and so, yeah, I mean, particularly when they're as young as you're talking about, too. Like by the time they start getting maybe to like third and fourth grade, depending on their cognitive level, they start to understand a little more about their disability, and you start to see different things. But when they're very young, they don't see themselves as disabled. They don't see
Right.
themselves, they are happy the way God made them, and they make that body do what it do. Okay. So
That.
I'm always just really impressed by, I look at a child and I'm like, the way your muscle testing is, the way your alignment is, you shouldn't walk. And look at you walking. And that is nothing but God's grace. And
Yeah.
so I really find it so encouraging, so motivating. I have lost some kids, not many, but that is devastating when you have kids with a chronic disability and they pass. But I always feel just grateful to have been in their life and to have maximized their function the way I could when I was a part of it. So a setting that I really don't like, and I have worked in, so I know I don't like it. Now I didn't just do clinicals in it, but I did some PR and work there too. I do not like working in a nursing home. So it's not I don't mind geriatrics, but it's the nursing home specifically.
Why?
um, I don't like the payment structure. I don't like the rugs. I don't like the compromising situations that I feel like it puts therapists in because of that. I'm not about it. I don't like, sometimes I feel like I understand having to motivate people. That's part of what we do, figuring out um, how to properly motivate your clients and your patients. But sometimes I just feel like, you have earned the right to say no, you know, and that is a part of your human dignity. And I don't like when I'm in a nursing home and they like, nope, you got to go back and ask, Mr. Smith to do it again. I'm like, I didn't been up there for Mr. Smith 3 times and he told me no. And I think Mr. Smith means no.
Mhm.
So I just don't, I don't want to work in the nursing home. But if I ever end up in a nursing home or if my parent, I respect those therapists. That's a unique individual because I know it's not for me. So
Nice.
what about you, Dr. James?
Contrary to popular belief in terms of people thinking about physical therapy, I'm not a fan of sports PT.
Mm.
That setting is just not for me from the standpoint of people thinking their game is affected by what I do, or like
Mm-hmm.
taping and rapping, things like that. That's just not for me. And then being like a hospice PT. Now I've had patients on hospice care, but just that other end, death is always inevitable in terms of like working with anyone, but you just see it a little too quickly on the
Yeah.
hospice end. And that's just one I'm not really interested in being a part of. But you get it. I get it a lot in terms of with working with geriatrics too. But I just feel like hospice is right here. It's just a little too close.
You know what? I agree with that. I probably I wouldn't have thought about that until you said that, but I'm not cut out for hospice either. I had to when you come into home care at my original job, you had to they sent me out with a hospice nurse, and I was unprepared. She didn't tell me, and I I watched a woman pass away, and I was devastated. I was like, why didn't you tell me we were going to see someone? Because they hospice nurses,
She probably didn't want
uh,
to tell you because you would have had that reaction.
they're angels, but they
Mm,
know, based on what they see, based on how a person is responding. I mean, she was spot on to the time, to the hour that this woman would pass, based on what she
wow.
saw, yeah, in this woman. But I like, yeah, after watching her take her last breath like that, and it looked like she was holding on because she had a young child who was getting off the
Mm.
bus.
Mm.
And her family really felt like she was trying to wait, and she just couldn't wait. But after that, I was like, I can't. I never got that out of my head. That image of her, that entire experience. Um, so yeah, Dr. James, I'm with
It's
you on
something
that
else.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
is. It
if you
is.
are watching us and you have any questions for us, you can put it in the chat. I think we do have a question
Okay.
from Dr. Janetta Spears. It says, when it comes to plan of care and frequency, how are you able to mentally switch with geriatrics and pediatrics since it's different? Now she is also a pediatric physical therapist.
That's a great question.
Okay, yeah. And so, particularly with schools, in schools, I think the biggest shift for any therapist coming into pediatrics in schools is rewrite goals for the length of a year.
Right.
And so, yeah, so everybody when they first come in, they're like, how am I even supposed to do that? But kids with, disabilities, the rate of change is slower. And so that projection is significantly different. In home care, I'm writing goals for 2 to 3 weeks, and then, reassessing. And so, and home care in itself is a beast because of how often policies change with OASIS, with insurance requirements. So how do I mentally switch? How do I do? I try to stay up on, in terms of home care, my basic requirements. So how do I need to write up, medical necessity here? Because it does change in what insurance is looking for in your documentation. So I try to stay up on that training. And then the common diagnoses that I see, so CHF, COPD, generalized weakness. I try to stay up on the key diagnoses, best practices. So I don't spread myself too thin, but I know every time I work, I'm probably going to see this diagnosis. So when I get a chance to take a class in there, I try to do that so I can stay sharp. Peds, I spend every day in and out there. That really is. Um, it's not hard for me, I guess, to stay there because that's where I spend most of my time. I think it's harder actually to make that switch to the geriatrics when I get there, and to the home care documentation, and to the communication that's required in that setting. Um, but I like it. It keeps me on my toes, and I like the change in pace. Honestly, I find it like refreshing. So it kind of gets me out of when I'm really stressed at my school job and I get to shift to something totally different. Then I can come back to my school job renewed, and vice versa. When I have a very challenging patient in home care and I'm like, whoo, I know I'm about to sign off and another full-time therapist is going to see them and I will not be back. And so, yeah, it's the switch is refreshing, but it can be challenging, but I enjoy it.
Awesome. Go ahead, Dr. Teoma. I hear you wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
no, I have a question, but I don't know if there were other questions.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so a question I want us to answer is how we allocate our time as far as working, because Dr. Shacorrah, sounds like you're doing geriatrics and pediatrics. I don't know if you're doing full-time limbs and things. I think so now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Full-time limbs
Yes,
and
ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Living things is popping, okay?
Okay. Ooh. And so, okay, well, why don't you talk about that though? How you transitioned from into full time from what you were doing before to limbs and things.
Before, so 2020 was like the pandemic. So 2019, I was pregnant. I had cleared the top of 2020, and I was supposed to go back to work about March, April of 2020. And I was working at a skilled nursing facility at the time as a contract therapist, and they had a recent outbreak of COVID. I said I couldn't
I
do
remember that.
it. So I decided to work remotely because there was a whole lot of remote jobs at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 0 birth to 3, and then I had some that were working in a or they were in a school setting and they needed a PT to cover the kids who were at home and needing therapists to see them as well since they weren't in school at the time. And so I took that for, I think I did that for like, I don't know, maybe a year, but I was easing into limbs and things at the time. So I was seeing some people telehealth for limbs and things, and then seeing the kids for this contract company I was working with at the other point. And they just had one thing happen, and I said, okay, I got to go. So that was like the push to go into limbs and things full time. I've been full time for the past 3 years.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Shacorrah.
So I guess I kind of always knew I wanted to go into pediatrics. It was always a area that I was heavily interested in. It was really that and women's health. And then I did a school-based clinical as a student. And, I was like, okay, if I do peds too, I want to do it in the schools. And so I just I think I talked about a little bit how I started in home care and just kind of kept looking for a school-based job, kept my feelers out there, made acquaintances with some school-based PT. My husband is a school social worker, so I met those therapists who work in his district and just kind of, I see A for peds, and just kind of kept reaching out. And then a job opened at the co-op that I contract with now, and I applied for that job. And so that job was actually a job for an assistant. But I applied for it anyway, and they hired me when they were looking for an assistant. So a sidebar, that's something that I saw that there was a study done that they were saying a lot of men, particularly white men, will see jobs with a lot of qualifications, and if they don't meet them all, they don't hesitate to apply. But women,
I was just hearing that today. Okay, go ahead.
We are more likely to say we have to meet every single checkbox before we apply.
Yeah.
And so what they were saying is like, don't undersell yourself. Like, if you may not need to reach all those boxes, like just apply for the job. And so this is a kind of example for me. They were not looking for a therapist. But I went in there and they hired me, and I've been there ever since. And I started at 1 day, and then as we kind of the caseload increased, I increased hours. And then the most senior therapist at the time, she retired just after COVID. COVID was very challenging for schools. And so when she retired, I was the least senior therapist on staff, but I transitioned into her role as the lead physical therapist. And so I've been managing the physical therapy department for that was probably the year before COVID, I transitioned into her role. So it's been 5 or 6 years that I've been the manager of the physical therapy department now.
So what's your split though, as far as how much time you're at one job versus the other, like during the week?
So I do 5 days at the schools, and then I only do PRN weekends for home care during the school year. And then during the summers, I do 2 days a week for home care.
Okay, interesting.
And you have hiring ability, We didn't say all that.
Yes. Yes. I have hiring ability.
Come
Yes.
on now.
Yes. Which is exciting, but actually very stressful.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
But yeah, and so I have an impeccable team right now. Shout out to my team. Um, because they all have come on. I've hired all of them actually. Yeah. And
Look
so
at that.
yeah, yeah, and they are amazing. They are amazing. I had one hire, actually the very first person I hired was not a good hire. So but everybody I've hired since then has been great. So that was a great learning experience for me, learning what questions I really need to ask in terms of the
Mhm.
fit for my company and the fit for my team. Um, and yeah, so we have a really great staff now that I'm proud of that I was a part of building.
Your
Awesome.
turn, Dr. Teoma.
My turn to answer the question. Okay. First, I want to just piggyback off of what you said about the qualifications thing. I have never been that person to think that I needed to meet all the qualifications. I'm like, they will have to tell me no because I'm going to
Mhm.
apply for this job. I remember coming out of PT school and it was that they would need 5 years of physical therapy experience, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, they're just going to have to use
Mhm.
my clinical internships as my experience, and I actually got interviews based off that because I went in there confidently, like I don't have 5 years, I just
Mhm.
graduated, but hey, I know this and I know that, so I
Mhm.
have never let those qualifications hold me back. They're gonna have to tell me no face to face.
Yeah.
But so for me, as far as so I'm in education now. I'll talk about that in a second. But um, the past few years, so I was in outpatient orthopedics. So I worked 3 days a week at a company where I was seeing patients, probably somewhere between 10 and 12 patients a day. And then I had my private practice as well, which haven't quite transitioned out here to North Carolina, still looking into how to transition the private practice and what I want to, and if I want to transition it or which aspects of it I want to transition. But I did my private practice 2 days a week. So one day during the week and then one weekend day. And that way I could still get clients in privately that wanted to see me, but still give 3 days a week to the primary physical therapy position that I had. And but not all physical therapy clinics or hospitals offer that type of flexibility as far as schedule wise or as far as pay and benefits wise. So I want to, acknowledge that part of it. Some physical therapy clinics, they want you to work the full 40 hours or the full 32 hours or whatever it is and just get it in however you can get it in. Um, there was something else I was going to say with that. Can't remember. It'll come back to me. But so now that I'm in education, so I'm still learning how time is allocated because we're not obviously seeing clients every day. But as a faculty resident, um, I am teaching or have 4 teaching days a week, and I still have one clinical day. So I have one day where I'm in the clinic seeing patients, and the other 4 days I'm either in class or I'm preparing for class or I'm in faculty meetings or I'm in committee meetings. So we're getting immersed into all the things that make up academia, not just the teaching part. And so I'm learning that in academia, they allocate time. The term that they use is effort. And so your effort depends on, and it's given in hours, and it depends on like if you're the course director or just helping with the course and how many courses you're course directing or just assisting with and how many committees you're on or how much research is a part of your time too, because some different universities require a certain amount of research. So, but every faculty member will have a different level of how their effort is allocated based on what their role is and what their research projects are and what courses they teach. So that's just one of the things I'm learning about academia.
That's cool. Let's Tell everybody where we went to school.
I got my bachelor's degree from Bowling Green State University in Ohio, but I got my doctorate degree from the real HU, Teoma.
Let's find out on Tuesday who's the real HU is gonna be.
Oh yes, I got my doctorate from Hampton University.
Okay. So I will give all of the schools that I went to a shout out. I got my undergrad degree in kinesiology from San Jose State University. I went to Howard University, the real HU, you know. I received my master's of physical therapy from there. My doctorate in physical therapy I received from Alabama State. And I received my Master of Divinity degree from Emory University, Candler School of Theology.
And now you teach at?
And now I teach at Duke University.
Man, just so many schools, Teoma. Okay, so I went to Alabama State University. I got my undergraduate degree in recreational therapy. And then I went on to physical therapy school at Alabama State University as well. So we have been to a lot of different schools, a lot of options in terms of where we decided to get our career started. But I wanted to talk about it because there are maybe people who are watching who are interested in going into physical therapy school. What would you say, having gone through the whole thing, but also now that you're licensed and practicing, if you could tell someone who is embarking on the interview process and that new way that they have of applying to PT school now, where as we had to go to each school that you wanted to apply to, what would you say to them now?
I'll start. I always tell my students to make themselves marketable with their undergrad degrees, just for their own sake, not for the sake of somebody looking at your resume and saying, oh, wow, you can do this, but for your own sake. So for me, for example, in undergrad, my undergrad major was in kinesiology, and there wasn't really a specific like job to go after when graduating with that degree, but except for like maybe becoming or that I knew about. I don't want to say my professors might say, oh no, she's wrong, but that I knew about. So, but I could have got certified as a personal trainer with my degree, or certified as a strength and conditioning coach. And so I would recommend that to students that are currently in either kinesiology majors or bio exercise physiology majors or anything, sports medicine, athletic training. Go ahead and get that additional certification. It might seem like extra time or a longer year, but in the grand scheme of life, it's only going to be more beneficial for you and make you more marketable as far as what your skills and abilities for. So go ahead, and you have all the training if you've already done your kinesiology and exercise physiology courses, to go ahead and take your personal training certification or your strength and conditioning certification, or even your athletic training certification test. So go ahead and just get those certifications out of the way that you can just continue to renew. That would be my advice.
Are we thinking high school students or undergraduate students or
people wanting to go into PT? So high school, maybe college, undergrad.
Okay. I think I would say if you're like in high school or younger, spend some time in the field. So ask as many questions, shadow as many clinics, shadow as many settings. At that time in undergrad too, this is you can't become a PT without knowing a PT, because you have to do clinicals when you get to school. So the road to the profession is through other people who have journeyed the same path. And so before you even get on that path, we are wealth of information, and we generally will share whatever you want to ask or you want to know. So I just encourage younger kids to soak it all up, and then to kind of take your education seriously. So, like, for kids out there, I think specifically children of color, typically we take those standardized tests, and then at that point is when kids decide they're not good at science or they're not good at math, and then they don't want to go the path to fields like that, which is they end up shying away from fields like physical therapy. But don't let a test tell you um, dictate your life. You know what I mean? Like physical therapy is about being dedicated and being committed, and you will be learning. You will be a lifelong learner in this field. And so, if you can buckle down, and just commit to the work, you will be successful. And there are people who want to help you be successful. So that's what I would say to younger kids who are interested in this profession. Is spend as much time around it as you can, and don't let one test tell you that you're not good at science and you're not good at math, so then you can't be a doctor, you can't be a physical therapist, because you can. Um, and then for undergraduate students getting ready to apply to PT school, I would say, a no is just a not yet.
Yep.
Most of us don't get into all the places we send the application to. It's a competitive program, so prepare yourself for a little rejection, and don't let it get you down. There's a spot for you in a program for you, and so be flexible in that regard, and where you're willing to go. um, and understand that your journey could have, you know, there may be some no's and there'll probably some maybes, and then there'll be some yeses over here. And so just kind of get ready for that. And that was a very up and down emotional process for me at the time. And now looking back, I'm like, I was overly stressed. There's an appropriate amount of seriousness that you need to take, but you can't sacrifice your health, and just stay the course, stay dedicated, and get your requirements, and understand that no matter how there may be a no.
Yeah. I actually want to piggyback off of a couple of things that you said, especially the failure thing, because just know that through failure is where we grow. Is So you can grow through successes, but when you fail, that's when you learn what went wrong or what didn't go according to plan, or things what opportunities you have to actually improve. And so I will say, like, as far as the whole science thing, I literally in undergrad, I had to retake anatomy, I had to retake physiology. I was in physiology class for half a semester. I didn't even know what the word meant in undergrad. I'm like, I'm just in this class because they said I have to take it, but I don't even know what the word means. And so I had to take chemistry over. I had to take all these basic sciences over. I didn't understand it just going through it the first time. But after going through it and hearing things for a second time or a third time, it actually finally started to make sense. But because I had to retake these courses over again, it didn't look necessarily the best the first time for my PT school applications. And Howard actually is the only school I actually got into of the schools that I applied to, which I appreciate. Um, and then I was waitlisted with Howard. So no school just said, yes, Teoma, we want you. But then, I feel like then once they got me, then you realize, oh, yes, I'm one of the top students in this class. No. But I felt the kind of way. But also, as far as the no's, I mean, all you need is one yes. Literally, all you need is one yes, because you will get no after no. I mean, I could write a book on how many no's I've received, but every single no that I've received has led me to my one yes to where I am now in life, and your no's will lead you to where you are in life, because it's going to guide you and redirect your path, and that can be a good thing. So let it be a benefit to you and not a point that you sit and wallow in.
Right.
Absolutely. I
Even
agree.
though it might hurt the first, when you get.
I was about to say, but let us talk about the aspect of that. It's true. It's true. And even at the beginning, I mean, you can have it at the beginning. You can also have it at the end, like when you get to the licensure exam part. And there are so many areas just being in PT school that take you through the roller coaster of emotions. But another thing, to your point, I would say a person needs to know who they are. A lot of us tend to want to get into something just because it's going to make us some money. But there's so much into PT that is determined by how you treat people and making sure that the rapport that you have with someone is going to be beneficial to them getting to their goals. And I just find a lot of people that are getting into PT now, they either don't want to sit there and have the conversation with the person to learn more about them, and a lot is found when you take a history from someone. And so if you take that time to learn about who you are, and then you can, even if you don't have anything in common with somebody, you can segue into something that they have that will build rapport with you. And I think that aspect, I mean, we can learn all that we can from a textbook, but the psych part, or the part that makes us human, that's the part people tend to lack. Somebody knows you. Shacorrah, is that you?
Oh, yes. Yes, Triumph Church, Triumph the Church, and Kingdom of God in Christ. Cleveland, Ohio is my church.
Yes, and she went to Alabama State with me.
What a small world.
The small. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she talked through the chat. This is what she was saying. But yes, I think this is oh, she said something else.
She says it's been forever.
So you can catch up.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about being a minority in physical therapy.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So I will start because I find that my experience has been different from a lot of other African-American minorities that may be in physical therapy, because for physical therapy school, I went to a HBCU. And so every student in my cohort of classmates was African-American. Which didn't always happen even at Howard. Yep.
We all went to HBCU for PT school.
Yeah.
Now, was that your story, Shacorrah?
No.
And that was
right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. But also a lot of other African-American PTs have not gone to HBCUs for physical therapy school. So oftentimes I hear that they're either the only one in their class or one of two or one of three, and it's a completely different experience. So we had a different kind of support system at Howard. One from our professors already, being at an HBCU. So we were taught with the mentality, knowing that one, we were going to be minorities in the field, but we were studying and learning together. So we already had a support system, and our professors are the ones who introduced us to the American Academy of PT, who when I was in PT school, NABPT wasn't in existence yet. So we only had American Academy of PT. And then we had the diversity committee that APTA had. I forget what it was called. But it was run by Johnette Meadows at the time. And with Howard being right in DC next to Alexandria, we were able to have easy access to APTA. So our professors molded us in with APTA, but also made sure that we had a network within ourselves and within the professors. And they told us that we were going to be the minorities, out in the field. They told us that it was pretty much only going to be like this at Howard. And then once you get out into the world, you might be the only one in your department, which I have found to be true. And it has.
Stop. Hold on,
Yes.
Teoma. Did you hear that, Shacorrah? Did somebody tell you was gonna be the only one?
Oh, so that wasn't the what they said was you will probably never work in a setting with clinicians as diverse as this. So that's what my chair told us. My program was 50% African American, maybe like a third Asian Pacific Island. Not even, I wouldn't even say a third Asian Pacific Islander, and then the rest Caucasian. And they were like, look around. You will never work with a therapist population as diverse as this one. So appreciate it. Take advantage of it. And I can't speak for everybody. I did not appreciate it. I did not accept. PT school is hard. So you're not really appreciating a lot. I don't know if anybody else, you are just trying to get through the hard moments. Yeah.
Oh, man. She said,
I didn't. And even the fact that I had so many I did appreciate having Black professors, since I knew from undergrad that was rare. But hindsight, that it was such a blessing. Such a blessing to be at an HBCU and have that support system and have them pour into you the way that they do. And have professors pull you aside the way that they do and really be personally invested in your success as a minority, and particularly talking to other people who are at programs not like that. It is, PT school is hard enough.
Right. I definitely appreciate they were invested in our success, and almost to a point though where it's not like how they do PT school now. They were extremely hard, even though they supported us. They were hard on us because they knew the world was going to be even harder on us. So there was no it was, if you failed, you failed. It was not, we're gonna coddle you and support you and make sure. No, it was just like, you look around this room. Only half of you all are going to be gone by the time graduation comes. And if you don't do this, you're going to fail. And if you don't pass this many practicals, you're going to fail. And then when you go out on your clinicals, you have to, look a certain way and dress a certain way and have your demeanor a certain way, because they knew how we were already going to be perceived. So we had to kind of go above and beyond what other people's expectations were going to be of us. And we really had to know our stuff. Like, we had to know because we would get tested and get certain questions in a way that maybe others would not get questioned. And so I think that was part of it. So I came into the field with that support system and ready for that. But it's still, when you're working in the field, like I went back to California, and then as diverse of a state and as inclusive and progressive as a state that California is, most of the time I was still the only Black PT in my department, or maybe there was one other Black PT, and definitely none in the in manager or supervisory or department chair roles. So, and then even trying to break into that was challenging, which is part of why I started my own practice because, I'm going to do my own thing then. So, because I'm qualified to do my own thing. So, yeah.
But that's interesting. A lot of people, when they see us, they think that, oh, there's so many more of you. But the rate and the statistics with having minority physical therapists and minorities, but also Black physical therapists, are even smaller in that percentage. And then there are many of us who have been trying to get into certain areas, like you just mentioned, and it's been difficult for us to do that. That's kind of why the American Academy of Physical Therapy was started.
Right, exactly.
So being a minority, it's interesting because when you go to other people and they see you, they're shocked. Do you have a doctorate in physical therapy, or your name is Dr. So-and-so? Well, how long have you been practicing? And what school did you go to? And how many years have you been doing
all this? The questions, all the questions.
You really do what I need you to do? Yeah, there are a lot of things that we experience that I'm not sure other physical therapists experience. There are a lot of us who get challenged into, can you really do what you say you're going to do? Are you professional enough? Do you look the part? All of those things. But like you have even mentioned, we've been told how we are to be and how we have to be even better than we are perceived because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But I was glad when I went to Alabama State, there were a lot of professors who did look like me,
Mhm.
and they were tough, man. They were tough. I just remember having one professor in particular that would have me do something over and over again, and I'd be like, I thought I did that right, and I had done it right, but she was just like, you can't second guess yourself. You have
Mhm.
to be confident in what you're doing because
Mm-hmm.
just like that experience of being with someone one on one, they're gonna challenge you.
Right.
And so you just have to be confident in what you're doing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I try to do, um, knowing that I think the percentage is 4 or 5% African American in physical therapy, something like that.
Mhm.
It's somewhere around one of those numbers. So when I go to conferences, and I see us, I make sure I try to introduce myself and make sure that they're connected in some kind of way to AAPT or NABPT or going to the minority affairs dinner or party or something. Because a lot of times they may go to the conferences and have no idea, because they've been to PT school at a PWI and they haven't been exposed to the minorities that are present in the field. And so I always try to make sure I meet somebody new and make sure that they're connected.
And that's what we have to do. I think there are some of us that feel like an island because we haven't connected with someone who can make us feel like an iceberg. Like let's get together and let's make
Mm-hmm.
it work in terms of knowing that you're not out here by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow in physical therapy, we have gotten to the point where people don't know what we do. We have to
Mhm.
explain it, over and over, say it in a different way. They know the difference between OT and PT, but they're not
You
getting it.
guys,
Sometimes,
Don't.
you
right? I
guys,
like
I think
sometimes.
they do. Like, go. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is how they say it. You work with showing me how to walk and everything like that. The OTs, they work with my hands and try to show me how to put on my clothes and stuff like that. They might give me a shower, show me how to do that if I'm needing that assistance. They know that part.
yeah, okay.
So from the standpoint of the difference in that regard, they seem to. But in terms of all of what physical therapy can do, no, I don't think we do a good job of explaining that on a mainstream level.
Yeah, I think this is a profession wide issue, and it has been since I've been in PT school. I feel like I've heard this conversation come up every year. So part of the reason why I appreciate Limbs and Things, what you do as far as getting the word out to the world and talking with other professionals. Part of why I try to do the health educational modules in the churches and expose
Mhm.
them to physical therapy, because there's also the whole issue of African Americans not being prescribed physical therapy as much as other
Mhm.
uh, um, cultures and things like that. So sometimes they don't even know that physical therapy is an option because they've only been given as an option pain meds or
Yeah.
surgery.
Yep.
So no, let's do PT first and then
Right.
see.
Yeah.
Exactly. Case in
And it's
point,
so,
I had this. Hold on, can I tell y'all this story right quick?
yep, go
I
ahead.
had I had a patient the other day. I've been working with her for maybe 2 weeks, and she has had gastric sleeve surgery, and then she ended up having a stroke on the table, and that
Mm.
was 5 years ago.
Ooh,
She had been having continuous falls and had never seen a physical therapist.
like why?
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 Exactly. And this is 5 years later. I said, "You've never seen
Yep.
anybody? This is a disparity." And yeah, she looked like,
Yes.
and I was just like, "How is this possible?
How?
Yeah.
Why does somebody
It's
not say you need to see someone? She should not have had that long. She could have been so much better, so much sooner."
Right.
Yeah. It's just similar with kids too. They make you fill out all those questionnaires. Mothers, anybody out there's had kids, when you come to the doctor and all of that. But there's so many kids whose physicians, who are supposed to be a lot of the gatekeeper into early intervention, who don't refer them. And the research is vast on, getting kids into PT early. The whole point of early intervention is that hopefully by the time they're school age, you can catch them up on a lot of these developmental milestones, but they're getting referred to us later and later and later
But
and being missed.
whose onus is that? Is that the physician or is that the parent?
So it's a little bit of both, I would say, because really, when you go see your physician, I think part of the issue in terms of birth to three is that when you come into the doctor, you probably know, Dr. James, are taking your kids to the doctor. They don't see your child walk unless the physician is out there watching your child walk in.
Or
So
you
if this is
say
your
it's a problem?
yeah.
Yeah,
So if you are a first time mom too, and so
yeah.
you don't really have anything to compare this to, you're not always sure if your child is developing appropriately. And then there's a lot of fear that comes as a parent, a lot of you know, I don't, maybe there's something wrong, but I'm not quite ready to go down that path, or I don't know what the options are if there is something, wrong. And so there's access to care that's the issue. But yeah, when it comes to birth to three, the real gatekeepers are like if you're in a daycare facility, they should have screening coming into there, but it's your physician
Mm.
at your wellness checks. So you as a parent have to voice and say, well, I think this is a little atypical, but they may not even hear your baby talk, and they're not thinking, if there's a speech delay, if they don't hear your baby talk, that may not even come up,
Yeah.
and so they're like 3.5 now or 4. You're like, well, she doesn't really say much. And now
Hmm.
it's like, now we're 4 years into this child's life. And so there's just so many ends of the spectrum in which people are not getting um, the help that they need, particularly if they're lower socioeconomic status or if they're rural, so access to healthcare is limited anyway. Um, but I want to go back a little bit because we were talking about being Black as a
Hold
therapist.
on. Let's get this comment. My oldest was in PT as a toddler. You have to educate yourself early and advocate often. Wouldn't you
Yes,
agree?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, very much so. Very much so.
Okay, I'm
But
sorry.
I was going to say, for me particularly, I was accustomed to being the only Black person. I grew up in a predominantly white community. So being the only Black person in a space wasn't new to me. Going to Hampton was actually a little bit of a culture shock just because I had never, other than church, I
Same.
had never really been somewhere with
Yeah.
that many,
Yes.
successful Black people in one space. So I was like, whoa, whoa. um, but I feel like as a clinician, the biggest thing for me is almost the microaggressions. Like as a new grad, I really had to learn, and I thought I had learned that as a child, like how to navigate that space, but it's totally different as an adult, particularly when I started my career in home care. So I'm in their comfort space. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times the things that people say to you in your home, when you're in their home, they wouldn't say to you elsewhere. So you're
Yeah.
on their turf. Um, and it's a lot of the funniest story I feel like I have, I was called the N-word by a bird. A bird, y'all. Like a
Word.
talking, a talking
Oh, they've been
bird.
saying it in the house. Hmm.
Absolutely.
And they kept telling me, I have no idea where this bird heard that. And the bird kept saying it to like was saying when I came in the door. And so, I don't know if you have birds, when you cover birds up, they're quiet. So they eventually had to cover the bird cage up with a sheet so the bird would stop calling me the N-word. But I get a lot of like, especially in home care, either people of color who are like, uh, where are you from? Like they're happy.
Yeah.
They're excited to see me
Yes.
because everybody else who's come in their home
Hmm.
doesn't look like them and doesn't understand their culture. But I get a lot of people who, I'll get like, I got a colored grandbaby, and I just love her so much. I love her so much. I get that. I had people. I used to have an Obama Biden sticker on my car. I've had people follow me out to my car, so asking me, just grilling me about why I'm voting for Obama and all of that. But I think what I really learned is to stand up for myself in those spaces, and I really learned the impact that I have on changing people's perception of us, because I am a lot of times the only Black person that they've had in their home. I
Mm-hmm.
work in a lot of rural schools. Usually, when I come into the school, if it's not a student on my caseload, so they don't know me, they'll ask, "Are you the mom of like the one Black kid in the school?" I get that a lot. I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not his mom. I'm actually the physical therapist here to see, somebody this other person, but
Uh-huh.
just being confident in yourself, presenting yourself in the most, showing up authentically, because you really change the perception of what people feel we are when they have you in their home and they get to build this personal connection with you. When you're coming into their school with the kids and you're picking up the kids and they're hugging you and they're working with you, and then they start to reframe what they think black people are and what their parents may have told them black people are and what they've grown up to believe we are. And
Mhm.
so it really shifted in me professionally from like almost like this uncomfortable space, like I don't know how to respond, to then me feeling like, nope, I got to stand up and I got to shout out, to me just being like, I'm just going to be my authentic self. If I feel like you are really hateful or, really disrespectful, I'm going to call you on it. But also feeling blessed and privileged to have the opportunity to have this impact in your life and maybe be the only person of color that you have a genuine relationship with. So then next time you see somebody like me, maybe you'll be a little less afraid. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
think about me and the positive interaction you had with me, and that'll shape how you interact with this next person. So it can be isolating, but it is also a privilege. I guess is the point I'm trying to make about that.
That's a good
If you can feel
mindset shift.
that
There's a lot of weight with that
way. Hmm.
in terms of being the one to create possibly a change in a person's mindset.
Yeah, just be yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we come into this profession because most of us who last in this profession genuinely enjoy connecting with people. And
Yeah.
that's going to bleed through you, whatever color your skin is. So just
Hmm.
showing up as that person who truly, genuinely cares, you may not do everything, right. You're not going to say everything they want to hear. But just being your genuine self. And that's how I take the pressure off of me. It's not really about me representing the whole race, but it's
Hmm.
about me showing up as my authentic self and having that human connection with you. And I know what that means, how you've impacted me. So I can only imagine how I've impacted you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I have
So,
a question because we got a lot of people who are leaving the profession. Have you
mm-hmm.
all heard about
Oh,
about
yeah.
physical therapists that are like, I'm done.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
what would you say to
Oh,
me if I say I'm done? I'm not, but let's just make it real.
I might give you a
I
round of
feel,
applause. No.
I I feel like, so particularly in schools, a lot of people were done with schools, period, with COVID.
Yep.
Um, how school professionals were treated during COVID, after COVID, and still drove a lot of people who work in schools out of school. So a lot of the senior therapists that I worked with are gone, in part or in whole, because of some of the shifts that happened with COVID. Um, I think that this profession takes a lot out of you because of the relationships that you build with people, right? So you are constantly giving of yourself to other people.
Hmm.
And so I sometimes I genuinely feel like you do need to take a break, because if you're not careful, you will completely drain yourself and deplete yourself. You know what I mean? And so there has to be that separation between when you pour back into yourself everything that you've now given to patients and clients throughout your day. So I think, if you can, decrease how many days you're working. If you can, totally switch up your setting and see if that, reignites your joy for the profession, because sometimes you're just not in the setting that you're called to be in anymore, and that's okay. And then you can switch out of patient care altogether, and go into consulting or go into teaching or go into, something totally different where you're not having that face-to-face client interaction as often.
Hmm.
And that may be just where you're at in your career.
Yeah.
Management,
Yep.
when you are managing the departments, a lot of times you're doing some patient care, but not nearly as much as when you are, a staff therapist.
Hmm.
Yeah. I would also encourage you to, one, think about what got you into the field in the first place, but then also think about what gives you the most fulfillment, or what would give you the most fulfillment. So there are a lot of things in our profession that are just beyond our control. if we work in corporate, for example, right? Like there are certain productivity demands that you have, and your documentation demands, and your billing demands, and your caseload demands. So there are so many things that can kind of just drain your soul. You're not gonna break my soul. What Beyonce say? You ain't don't break my soul. But and that weighs on you. So I I had to decrease my days. Like I said, I went down to 3 days, and then I started my own thing on the side a couple of days a week. And I always knew I wanted to get into education. So just because it's 2024, I graduated PT school in 2008. So it's taking me some time to actually get into education the way that I actually wanted to get into it, like on a full-time basis. But how can you work your way to the part of PT that's going to fulfill you? Because if you keep doing the same thing that keeps draining you, you are going to end up switching careers or switching professions. And if that's what you need to do, that's fine. But if you want to stay in the field and continue with the degree that you have, then see what is going to make me be fulfilled and how can I get there? And then start taking those steps so that you can achieve your goal.
You can work with animals and quit working with people altogether. Go on and go into equestrian, go in with the racing dogs.
To you.
There is good money there. There is good money there, and that is a strong niche. And
you know how much a dog evaluation is? I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah. So you can forget the people altogether if you want.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I think a lot of people are getting out before they see what else is out there in the field already. And you can use this degree to do so many different things in compliance. You can go behind the scenes and do at the government level. There are so many other aspects to explore before you just hang up.
So I think maybe that should be one of your next sessions, is the different levels of, or it could be multiple sessions, like the different aspects of PT. Yeah,
because I think it's sad that people are leaving. We have such a great need to continue to serve people. I know that, you know, the downside is the reimbursement and things of that nature, but there's so many other ways with these cash-based practices or even hybrid practices like LimbsNThings. You can do both. However, we have to find a way to keep people living as long as they can, as functional as they can be. So I just think if you are the physical therapist that's thinking about giving up, you take some of our advice. All right, y'all. It's been great talking to you. Anything you want to say as a final thought as we leave each other in terms of telling someone who is interested in physical therapy, someone who needs to probably go to physical therapy and just sitting on the fence like, nah, I'm not that bad. Or someone who you just feel like needs to know what a physical therapist does. How about that? Let's say what we think is physical therapy and how we would advertise it so everybody knows.
Okay.
What you got? I know
physical therapy is for me. I guess when I think about both settings that I work in, but is really maximizing independence and function and participation. In school-based physical therapy is hugely about participation and your ability to access and engage in the school curriculum. And so if there are limits to your ability to participate in rather it be leisure activities, your professional activities, and it's a physical need, rather you're limited by pain, rather you're limited by motion, rather you're limited by strength, then you probably need physical therapy at every age, you know. So if you got a little infant and normally, you know, you got infants raising their rattle here and shaking it together and bringing it to midline, and that baby is not doing that, and you like, my baby just kind of still, like, I don't know if it's a personality or what, they're not, you know, engaging with their environment the way you would expect. So you probably need physical therapy, you know. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you got your grandfather, who's not getting in there with the family, and communicating with the family. A lot of times, especially in the elderly, they become isolated and you just don't see them as much because it's a struggle getting out and getting to where they need to go, or they don't want to grab the walker because then you're going to think they old. And so then they don't come. They probably need physical therapy. So if you just feel like you haven't seen Auntie in a while, and you're like, what's up with her? And you call, find out if she's just struggling to get out of the house, if it's taking her longer, so she just don't feel like going through it anymore. Those are small things that I think people feel like they just have to accept, like it's typical aging, or this is just the way my body is. And there are a lot of things that we can help to maximize function is what I really think we do. Maximize independence, maximize function, and get you to be able to participate in your environment the way you really dream of doing it.
Mm-hmm. That was a good commercial.
Yeah.
Before I can, can I sell it? Can I package it? I sell it too.
I completely agree with everything that you said. I guess just saying the same thing in my own words is, if there's something that you are not doing, or to the best of your ability that like even if you don't, so let me even say this, even if you don't feel like you're in shape, because a lot of people say, oh, I just don't feel like I'm in shape, I can't run like I used to, I can't walk like I used to, I can't get up and down the stairs like I used to, and everybody just blames it on aging, and
Right.
aging typically is not the reason. It's typically a change in your lifestyle or a change in your activity level that is more of the reason. But the first things that people say is, I need a massage therapist, or I need a personal trainer, when really you need a physical therapist,
Right.
because your physical therapist has a plethora of manual skills that you may consider massage, but could be joint mobilizations, could be scar mobilizations, could be myofascial release, trigger point release, that may be beneficial for you. Or you say you need a personal trainer. Your physical therapist knows how to do exercise and fitness assessments to help, and can probably train you better than the personal training, because the trainer, because we have the education and the experience to do so, and we can help you to reach your goals without getting injured, and give you those exercise parameters that you need to stay within, so that you don't push yourself beyond the limit that is going to get you in towards or increase your risk of injury. So before you think of even, let me add one more thing. You may even have something going on with your bowels, bladder, sex, um, and you might not know what to do. You had a kid and you're not peeing right,
Yep.
because that happens. And people tell me all the time, you might need to see a pelvic health therapist, physical therapist. So there's so many different aspects of physical therapy that people may benefit from or need from, that they just aren't aware of. So I just think that you should just check with the physical therapist first, because we're most likely going to have the knowledge to help you, or be able to refer you to someone if we don't have that knowledge.
Right. And you can save yourself some money by going to a physical therapist on top of going to multiple people for the same issue and not getting any results.
Yeah.
It's important, I think, if you have any function in any area of your body and you are not up to the specific area that you want to be in, you know what you can achieve and you know where you are now is not that level, see a physical therapist for any body part. There is someone who can assist you in any area. I mean, there are people that come in and say they have back pain, and just to your point, like you were talking about bowel and bladder, the person is impacted and they can't poop. And half of the reason your back hurts is because you're not pooping, but you didn't go to a physical therapist first. You went to, a doctor who ended up giving you gas X or something like that to help you go. And that really wasn't it. You just need to move. And then your bowels will move, So that there are so many instances where you think it's related to something else, but physical therapy can help too. I think that was a good commercial. We need to try to do that. So we can really help some people know that, you really don't have to be in pain or not functioning your best, even having some numbness or some issue where you're continuously falling, or you can't open this, or you can't raise your arm over your head, put your shirt in. There are so many things that we can end up helping you with that if you just sought a physical therapist, you'd be better off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
lymphedema, you have a little swelling.
Swell it up, exactly.
And you're like, oh, this just comes and goes. It's fine. You might need to see a lymphedema therapist.
Exactly. And maybe, I think some of it is people just don't know all of the different sectors that physical therapy is.
Yes, very vast scope.
That's why I said you should do another session on it.
Physicians too. So people go to their doctors, and this is the U.S. Western medicine is pharmacology based, and so they don't get the referral, and physicians aren't aware, that there are these niches too. So there's a lot of education happening, but sometimes the question might just be, go ahead, Dr. Jane.
I was just saying, somehow it has to be that it's pushed into mainstream, because that's the problem. People don't know, and if you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
Right.
So speaking of that, that's motivated me. I know personally I should go live more. I appreciate you, Dr. James, for going live with Limbs and Things consistently. So I just think when you say mainstream, every physical therapist everyone has a phone. Every single one of us, we can go live for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, so be on the lookout, because it's been on my heart to go live, but I get scared going live. I know we live now, but as much as I talk in front of people, doing it out into the internet, it just makes me so nervous. And so I kind of shy away from it, but I really need to just lean into it.
Because it's all about helping somebody. And we talk to people one-on-one all the time, but the ability to talk to multiple people about the same issue could be life-changing for someone. So pull up with Limbs and Things is to confirm something you know, to challenge something you don't know, and to give you the option to share this information with someone else. I hope you found this information helpful. Thank you, Dr. Shacorrah and Dr. Teoma, for sharing all that we have experienced and all that we want somebody to know about physical therapy. You guys have a good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.